joining us today as well. We're in the third day of the workshop, and just to wrap it up, it hasn't been intensive for the whole 3 days, but it's been intensive for all the 2 hours in a day that we had. The topic is more than interesting: internal communications around research, culture of openness to peer review, and today, even more, the process of approvals of research proposals at our institutions. Again, we have our colleagues from Loughborough University, Claire Edwards and Adam Wood. Claire is the Research Development Manager and Adam is Contract Manager. And again, today they will pass on their experiences and procedures in place at Loughborough University. And I will share something about the procedures and the lack of procedures at the University of Novi Sad Faculty of Sciences. These topics are really very interesting. And I have to say that I actually want to raise a question that and ask you, will you be able, the participants, let's say, for example, participants outside the Faculty of Sciences, will you be able to pass these experiences to your colleagues who are in management structures of your institutions? Will this word be spread in a way? Our colleagues from the Faculty of Philosophy are not here today, but I was really thinking to myself, will this be heard in some higher instances who actually have the executive roles? I mean, I'm not calling out anybody, but Diana, I know that you're in a half position, for example, and that you are in charge to make changes and decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, definitely. I will initiate some changes after this seminar.
Mm-hmm. That's really great to hear, because I'm really happy, and I think that the Faculty of Sciences is happy that we can already have recipes how to do things. They might not be replicable to 99%, but quite a great bit of it can be implemented in our institutions without so many efforts and so many changes.
And I'm happy that I can use your recipes.
Perfect. Yeah. Great. I'm so glad to hear it. And I will not be wrong if I say that our colleagues from Loughborough University are open to any questions coming from not only Faculty of Sciences, but our colleagues. I think it's important to exchange and talk and see, not reinvent the wheel, but just use good experiences and good practices. Okay. I would, again, like every morning, say hi to Diana and kindly ask her to, again, welcome you all to the workshop, and we can start our day. Diana, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gaga. Thanks everyone for being here today with us. This is the third day of our workshop and the last day of this workshop, but not the last event that we will organize in the future. So I would really like you to join us in other workshops and seminars that we will organize, and also to communicate with us, not only when we have these kind of events, but anytime that, for example, you need help or you need some kind of a cooperation different than that you're used to, for example. So this would be a nice result of these kind of gatherings here at the UNSPMF. So thank you for being here today, and hope that you will be able to stay the whole 2 hours and to hear what we have to say today, and probably engage in some kind of discussion and problem solving with us during this 2-hour session. So thank you very much and enjoy the workshop.
Thank you very much, Diana. I will just go through the program and highlight that the topic of today is actually proposal workflows, budget development, approvals paths, something that I think we all lack here, not only at the University of Novi Sad, but generally at Serbian universities. I don't have quite a good insight into private universities. They might be doing things in a different way. It's worth talking to them as well. Maybe they have different procedures since the money is differently distributed. We are a public budget institution and pretty much have our academic freedom to choose our research directions. We will also hear a pre-recorded session on why approvals of contracts are important in Loughborough's journey over the last 5 years. This presentation will be given by Sam McGinty, who is head of legal office at Loughborough University. And this just reminds me that we also lack this kind of legal officers support in the process. This is kind of a weak spot for almost all institutions in academic institutions in Serbia, as far as I know. We will also hear a presentation on when higher level approvals are needed at the Loughborough process. So without much further ado, I invite my colleague Claire to, no, sorry, Adam is the first one. Sorry, Adam, please, the floor is yours. And thank you.
Thank you, Gogo. Can you hear me okay?
Perfectly, thanks.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to bring your presentation up and try to share my screen with you, so bear with me a moment. Okay, so I think that is viewable now for everybody. So okay, that's great. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you today about some ways we do things in the research office at Loughborough. Some of these we'll have touched on yesterday when we saw some screenshots about the peer review process.
So it's not changing on the screen.
Oops.
Can we try again?
Bear with me. Is that changing?
No, it's not showing the presentation.
Just bear with us. The slide doesn't seem to be advancing.
Press escape.
No problem, just take your time, it's fine.
Okay, thank you. So
Great. Yeah, it's good.
Now.
Yeah, thanks.
okay, now we've got it. We were just being a bit overcomplicated here. We had the screens up on the wall as well, but okay. So hopefully this is now working for you all. So as I was saying, we'll have touched on some of these things yesterday, and we're just going to go into a bit more depth about the path things go through from when an academic has an idea and gets in touch with the research office, through the budget creation process, eventually a little bit about the contractual stage at the end of that process, and feeding into that, it's how we channel things to the correct approver within the university. So initially we'll receive a request from an academic, and at this point it's extremely important that we get all the information that we need in order to assist the academic, and also to assess if it's the correct call, and if the resourcing is right for that project proposal. And we also need to, because we in the research office aren't approvers generally, so we assist the process rather than sign the process. So at this stage, it's also really important that the relevant people are made aware, either within our department or within the school. So for example, I showed you yesterday about how an email might, for example, be sent to Steve Rice, who would then instigate the side-by-side peer review process. And there's a bit of a difference between the way we do things at Loughborough and the way some other universities do things. So at Loughborough, we asked the academic to complete an electronic form as a first initial point of contact. Some other organisations I've worked in, you would sit down and have a face-to-face meeting with an academic, and you would talk through the resources they require. However, I think the main driver for Loughborough is, and I think Steve Rothberg has shown how wide our campus is, so it's approximately 2 miles long. So we're a centralised department, and sometimes it's not appropriate for us to travel or have the academic come to us. So that in part is why we've come up with the process we have done. And as I've said, key contacts are notified as part of that. So I'm just going to move to the next slide and just look at Claire to see if it's updated. Have we moved on? Okay. So using the electronic form, I think there's some real positives here, certainly in comparison to some of the other processes I've used previously. So I think the first thing is it really makes the academic think about the exact resource requirements they need for a project. And some of this is driven by the questions we ask the academics. So I'm going to actually demonstrate the form to a degree shortly, but we go through some very detailed questions, and it's very hard to complete it and not provide the information we ask for. The second point on this slide we've touched on as well, and Steve Rice touched on it yesterday. It certainly enables the key decision makers to determine if it's worth going ahead with the project at a very early stage. And the other key advantage is we don't need meetings unnecessarily. So if we had a meeting for every simple proposal, some of these are less than £10,000, is it appropriate that we would take an hour meeting and then do all the work we have to do for a very simple project proposal? We also have a clear audit trail. So if there's any queries come during the project life cycle, we can refer back to this. We have a copy of all these forms sent to a central location in addition to those key players that we've already touched upon. As I've said, the academic considers everything. It will ask them what consumables you need, what travel you need, what staff do you need on the project. So hopefully if they start completing it and realise that the project isn't sufficiently advanced in order to go through this process, they would then consider those options and return to it. And we can also build in other mandatory processes. So if, for example, we're dealing with funders in the United States, we might have some export control considerations, and the form can be adapted to say, have you completed your training? Have you considered this? Have you been through the correct processes internally? So including ethics, which is obviously key in many of our projects. And I'll put some negatives as well. So as with many of these things that we're talking to you about, our processes at Loughborough, I would say, aren't perfect. There is room for improvement for us as well, which hopefully when we hear about your processes, there might be some things there that we can factor into ours. So I think the key negative is that we can't give face-to-face guidance. It would then be an email exchange, for example. An academic can't ask a simple question in order to complete it without getting in touch with us by a different method. And the other thing is we still need meetings for larger projects. So this form, if we've got multiple project partners, if we've got very complicated budgets, we may need to actually sit down with the academic anyway. And that's usually done together with the research development manager as well. Some of the areas of the form require a judgment to be made, and we find this quite often. So at Loughborough, we separate out quite clearly research activity from enterprise activity. This is related to our charitable status and charter that we work under. Sometimes if something's selected incorrectly, then the workflow that works in the background will channel that to the incorrect person. It may sit there for a few days before we actually get hold of it, and it can reduce the time we've got to assist the academic. But thankfully, that isn't a huge problem, but it's just something we need to be aware of. And the final thing is, if we send an email notification to multiple contacts, then generally we get email conversations which ensue as a result of that. So we may feel bombarded, so to speak, as a result of that. So I'm just going to show you briefly now about the form that we use and how it's completed. So just bear with me one moment and I'll work out if I can do this. Are you still viewing the presentation? Right. I stop sharing and then share. That's... Yep, you got that. Okay, so this is the online form that we've developed for academics to complete. You'll see there's a welcome page here, which gives a little bit of advice about browsers that we use, and then what happens next, and some useful a link there to help the academic. So it's quite a simple form, really. Some of these I'll just fill in as I go along so we can progress. So if we select a school, for example, you can see here it asks about the caliber areas, which Steve Rothberg talked about. So again, this will influence who gets to hear about this, in particular with our research development managers. We then have some project information. So if we tick it's not a fellowship, and if we assume that I am the PI, then based on the answers we give, it takes us down now a different path. So if we, for example, fill some trial data in here, this is a key question because this will usually tell us if it's enterprise activity or not. The project specific deadlines, you can see it will ask us this information. This is a very key area of the form because it actually asks for a link to the exact call that the academic is applying to. So rather than just say it's a research council bid, we could actually put in a specific link there. I don't have one to hand, so let's just copy whatever is up there. And then again, it branches out here as well. So this is the way we've built the form. So if it's a joint application, it would ask if we're the lead, or if, for example, we were covering this project, we'd put the co-applicant as the lead because Novi Sad is the lead on this project. And it then continues through a set of questions. So we would be claiming costs via the funder, for example, say. We then include all our co-applicants' information. We highlight if there's international partners, because this can also influence some of the people that need to know about these things and some of the other processes that we need to do. For example, our due diligence can be affected by this. So if we tick yes, we could put Serbia in this case. And then this question here is one that is commonly misinterpreted. We would generally do a costing for every project. There are some very small projects that we allow academics to not have a costing for. For example, if it's less than around £20,000 and has no staff commitments, we would allow them to actually tick no on this occasion. Generally, it would be yes. So if we tick yes, then again, we go through the values that we're applying for and some of the project information here. So the form's very interactive. The duration feeds into how we would then cost the project. This asks the principal investigator, so what time commitment you have. So on this project, it would generally be maybe 10% of an academic's time. Will they have co-investigators? So on this one, I would be a co-investigator, for example. And this is a key one as well. So will we need research associates on here? So generally in the UK, a research council will be looking for a professor to put in a small amount of time and then bring in a research associate to do most of the work. It brings our early stage researchers on. In this occasion, though, we will tick no for the sake of the demonstration. We also ask if there's dedicated support needed. So this is where we've learned as an institution, because we might apply for bids that are 5 million, 10 million, 40 million pound that take a lot of admin support. It places a burden on the existing support if we don't include at this point that we need other resources in order to complete the project. I'll tick no though, because if we tick yes, it will just ask for details of what we need exactly. In this case, we don't have a studentship. This will certainly tick yes on most occasions. So we would put travel to Serbia, let's put on there. And we would put the amount. It then asks for your consumables as well. So I'll tick no on there, but again, it would just ask for details. Any specialist equipment it asks for, we have to deal with that in certain ways. There's certain implications, depreciation for our accounting team to consider if we tick yes on that, but we'll put no. And then it asks for any other costs and any other significant resource implications. So these are all generally tick box exercises from now on, asking for various things. So you can see it's not actually a massive job for the academic to complete. It's fairly quick. It leads them through the process and it extracts all the information that we actually need. When they tick submit at the end, it all then comes through on an email. So that's our form that we use. So if I just come out of that again, and I should be getting used to moving around here now. Okay, so that's the support request form, and really that's the first stage of the process. Excuse me. So what happens when we actually get the form through to the research office? And I think a key thing here is communication. So the research support team leader in charge of the team for that school will allocate the request to a member of the team. And this can be based on experience, workload, a number of other things, annual leave. But in general, the more junior members of the team would get the more simple proposals. Anything very complicated would be done by either the team leader or the research support officer within that team. as I say, we let the academic know who's dealing with that case. They've then got a point of contact. It avoids group email addresses being contacted. It's a direct link then between the academic and that member of staff. And we record everything. So I think Steve Rice mentioned yesterday about recording things on a spreadsheet. Sorry about that. That's our weekly fire alarm tests. So yeah, we record everything, and some of the associate deans have access to those resources. And then we begin work on the case. So we check the call specific documents, which, as I said when I showed you the form, that's key. It shows us what they're applying for. It allows us to assess whether we're complying with the requirements of that call or not. They may need meetings, they may not need meetings, it just depends. And sometimes they'll then link to my team, which is the research contracts team. So sometimes we have to review the terms and conditions in advance to say, well, if we get this, is it likely that we can accept the award? Because it might not be worth proceeding if those terms and conditions are non-negotiable and unacceptable to the university. So as a result of that, and my team aren't in a position to check the terms and conditions of every grant that we apply for due to the volumes. So we inform academics that they can submit bids, but it may be that they can't accept the award if suitable terms can't be negotiated when we get to the contractual stage of there. So just moving on to the costing of the project. So we use a system we call Cpam, the Costing, Pricing and Management System, which is it's a module that's attached to our main finance system here. And it allows us to do things quite accurately. So this system links into our human resources data. So there's no guesswork as to what salary somebody's on. It should all draw through as we go through the costing process, gives an accurate output for not only salary, but what overheads we can claim. It automatically exports things into the documents we need, so we're not having to cut and paste and having a margin of error there. It just exports the document and we put that into the workflow. And within the research office, we also set up the schemes and the funders. So a funder may have various different schemes. One of them might pay 25% of direct costs as overhead, like the Horizon 2020 projects. Another one might pay 80% of the total costs. So we can actually set those up within the research office to ensure that we're doing things correctly. And then once we've actually done the process, we just fire it into an electronic workflow. So everybody who needs to see that it's automatically programmed into the system. The only slight exception being if it's a very large bid where we have to do a manual approval, for example, with Steve Rothberg. It attaches a unique reference number to each proposal, which we then use in all our correspondence. And if we're actually successful, within the same system, we set a process to run where it then sets up the budget codes in our main finance system. So it links across directly into that. Because obviously with research projects and our reporting, we need the spending for each project to be ring fenced so we can report accurately on that. So again, we're a bit interactive today, so I'm going to give you a little bit of a demonstration about our costing system, so you can see what it looks like in practice. Hopefully I'll get to the right screen. So, yeah, so we're in. So some of this we have to do, there's some confidentiality and some sensitivity with people's salaries. So I won't be able to demonstrate everything today, but we go through a set of steps to actually fill in the information. So we have our project title. We also have our investigators and departments here. So this ensures that each person who needs to know about this project will get a notification. So the primary principal investigator on this project is Rob Wilby, who's in our geography team. But we wouldn't want the Dean of Geography approving mine and Claire's time on this project. So we add in our department here as well. I would suggest that Rob's is probably the lead department, but anyway, that's just one of those things. In this section, we enter the funder name, we enter a start date. This isn't accurate in this case, this is just a dummy record. Duration, and then you can see this scheme name that we talked about, that the Research Office control. That's a standard scheme there. We also put our external partners on here. So I think on this one we would have had to put Bill Jano as the PI, but this was just the first email that I got to where I could copy the name exactly. So, but we've got the University of Novi Sad. We can see who the ultimate funder is here. So it's European Commission funding, but via yourselves as the lead organisation. Across this screen here, we have a little bit of information that we need to fill in. So it will say who's dealing with the project, what type of project it is, and what type of award it is. These are all key things to our reporting internal. The status will change as we went through this. And you can also see there that this is the peer review tab, which we covered yesterday. We don't use it so much now. We then go to the costing screen. So just bear with me a moment. So if I was to actually go into this screen here, this is where we enter all our financial commitments on here. So just bear with me. So if I was to check this out in order to proceed. So I've got Claire in there, but I've not entered any information, so we can't see any salary information about her. But we can add people in here. So if I was to add somebody who isn't working here, a research associate, for example, we would add those in. We would say the post isn't recruited to yet. And then when it catches up, we have a line here. So all of these fields we can add in. So we would put them as a researcher. We put the grade in here. So we have set grades that we use within the organization. And then once we've done all that, we could put them as full-time on the project. And we also put in the overhead calculations in there. And then with a bit of luck, it then just automatically calculates the actual cost of that position in there. So you can see a researcher here for 36 months is around about the £169,000 mark. It also breaks it down, which we need to do for a lot of our things. So we have what we call on costs on top of this. So your national insurance and your pension contributions. So it will break those down in addition to that salary total. It will also show you some of our overhead costs as well, which are these indirect costs here. So if I just come back a level, once we've put all the stuff in there, now what I would say is if we put a specific staff member there, it would not let us select the grade point and the scale. It would just draw the information through from our HR database. But as I say, that's somewhat sensitive, I suppose, in disseminating that to people. We can then put in, and once again, if this catches up, we can put in our partner costs, which we would, if we were working and we were the lead, we'd ask the other organisation to supply those to us, and we'd just enter those in. And then we would put in our non-staff costs as well, which...
Just to add something on what Adam's saying, if we're doing an EU project, which is particularly complicated, we'd probably have a budget spreadsheet that sits alongside this system so that the partner costs are accurate for what we need to put into the EU submission system, as well as our own costs. So just to be clear on that. And we would then save that document on this system so that it's there for our records. Just
exactly within the document area. And the final part of the costing would be the other costs that we put in. So a lot of this will be travel, for example. So as we go through, we can put the detail in here if we want. So we can set up a very detailed budget. We could put a flight to Serbia, and then we would put it as a fixed price because we would have got a quote from our university providers. So let's assume that Claire and I are allowed to go first class, and we'll put in £1,000 in there.
That won't happen, by the way.
That won't happen, no, exactly. So once we've done all that, as I said, we can then, you can see on the pricing tab, it will actually break it all down. So we've got our staff here, we've got the travel here, and we can also see, so it will give the price that we charge to the funder. It's actually putting in some of the overheads automatically. It looks on this occasion slightly out. It could be the wrong scheme I've used, but we would double check that too. Oh no, it is actually going.
It's added it on the side.
It's added it on. It's 125%. Although it's not showing slightly worryingly at that point. But we would then export this into a document which we call our RX2 process. So it will think about this slightly. Now, Claire, can you see that? Yeah, so this is the budget that we've developed for this. And this is the document that enables the financial approvers to look at it and decide whether we should be going ahead with this project. So it gives the cost of the various things. It gives what we're claiming for our overheads, and it gives a shortfall generally here. So it can see compared to our full economic cost, we've actually got a shortfall on this project. Okay, so just bear with me again. So once we've done all this, once we've actually saved that document, then we submit this into a workflow. Now, unfortunately, it's not possible to show you that, because if I was to submit this, then the Dean of Geography would get a notification and probably be slightly cross with me. So let's not do that. So that's a brief little look through our system. I'm just keeping an eye on time, so I might have to speed up a little bit with some of this. The other thing that we actually do is we do give academics some resources to actually help them with this initial calculations. So academics, if they choose to do costings themselves, they sometimes look on our website, they see a salary scale and think, well, I can work that, I'll do 10% of that. Whereas it's frequently inaccurate. It doesn't include the national insurance contributions, the pension contributions, which are mandatory in the UK, and which the employer bears. So there's probably something similar in Serbia, although I don't know your exact tax regimes there. So we have actually developed a sort of spreadsheet for academics to use, but we make it clear that this is just for them to design a budget to see if something's appropriate. So previously I've seen things where academics have wanted a project with 2 professors on for 2 years at 10% of the time, but there's a cap on the bid of £10,000. So if they'd gone through this process, they wouldn't have probably thought of applying to that call. So again, I'll just dip in very quickly into this and show you what we have, so bear with me. So sorry about this, I'm just having a slight bit of trouble getting the correct screen to share. Okay, so yeah, so this is a spreadsheet we put together for academics. We give instructions here about how to use it. We also highlight the assumptions that we make, so we can't do it as detailed as the costing system we've just done. So we'll put an average grade in for all these different positions, so dependent on what they're asking for. We also put some notes on here about the assumptions we've made, so we allow for certain increases in salary, but then it's not as accurate as what we actually have. So if I just move through to here, most of it is just drop downs for the academics. So if they want a research associate, it puts a specific grade in, and they can just work through this, and it gives them a more accurate calculation as to what they would actually need than if they were to calculate it themselves. We also do research council bids in the UK, as I think Steve mentioned the day before yesterday. So this would give the research council contribution, which is that 80% of the actual cost on there. And they can use this to actually just develop the budget up to the point where they think they're in a position to contact the research office. Okay, so just to move very quickly, I'm aware time is pressing a bit. So the final stage for approvals is that of contracts. So research contracts are generally dealt with by the research contracts team, which is the team I work in here at Loughborough. Some of the very complicated projects we may need the advice of our legal services team on. So the difference between the research contracts team and legal services is generally legal services are qualified solicitors and lawyers, so they'll have got more of a legal background than my team have. And what's happened, they've developed what we call a contracts handbook at Loughborough. Now, I'm unable to actually share that because of confidentiality reasons with a wider audience. But the contracts handbook sets out our standard position on a lot of things, and it also says what we need to escalate and what type of contracts it covers. So you can see that I've put a few as an example. So collaboration agreements are very common, or you might call them consortium agreements on European projects. Non-disclosure agreements, again, are very common. grant award acceptances are common, and then probably less so for material transfer and subcontracts. And that's not an exhaustive list, that's just the main ones. Anything else that comes along our way, we'll attempt to deal with and take advice if we need to. But when we have to actually escalate things, we complete a contracts approval form. So as I said earlier, within the research office, we approve very little ourselves, but we assist the academic in the completion of a form. So we basically set out what's the issue with the contract, how it deviates from our position, and then also who needs to approve it. So there's generally 3 levels that we generally use. One is our head of research, one is our director of research, and the other one is our director of finance, would be the most common approvers in this process. We get information from the academic, so the strategic importance actually comes from the academic, and this helps the approver to work out whether we should accept it as an imperfect contract or not. But for certain things, the school can do a lot to mitigate the risk. So we ask for those practical steps that are going to be employed to mitigate that risk. And the research contract manager then does a risk assessment. So we use a red, amber, green approach to say how likely the risk is and what the impact is if things go wrong. So the main things we escalate are the term of confidentiality. So we quite often get contracts that ask for things to be kept confidential forever. That's obviously an additional burden on the university to comply with that. Intellectual property ownership and licensing is common. Governing law and jurisdiction, including dispute resolution, is also a very common one. So when we were negotiating the contract with GOGA for this project, it's very common that the governing law is that of Belgium. It's not UK law. So we then have to just get somebody to approve that we can go with that Belgian law, which thankfully happened in this case. Liabilities, also a very common one, unlimited liability because of our charity obligations. We can seldomly accept. And then also the rights to publish. So our academics here, they're here for the public good, to research, to publish. So if we get anything that ties that obligation, we have to escalate that for approval. So we sometimes get these in advance. So if we think that somebody is unlikely to change their position, so for example, on this project, it would be very unlikely that a European consortium would accept UK law, especially with Brexit. So we get approval in advance that we can accept that of Belgium, and then we don't have to bother negotiating that with the collaborator. And we actually have a different method of escalating documents. We have a SharePoint site where we upload all the documents. We share with the first approver, and then they progress things through the system. Once it comes back, we receive the form, and then we can then get the contract signed off by our head of research development. So that's a lot of talking from me. So that's all I've really got to cover about approvals, about workflows today. I think it probably gives you a little bit of flavour, and those people from Serbia who'll be visiting our office can obviously see in a bit more detail how these things progress through. But at that point, I'm going to stop talking and ask if there's any questions.
Thank you so much, Adam. This was just a brilliant and deeper insight into your online forms. This is very valuable for us at the moment because we are in the process of making one. And the insights into level of details that you ask at the first moment from the researcher is really important to us. And I would be really grateful if it's possible, if it's not a confidential document, if you could share the questions, the initial questionnaire that the researcher has to fill out just to submit the intention of the proposal. That would be really awesome if you could share that with me and Biljana. Just to, and Vice Dean is also here. He might not be listening at this very moment due to some other obligations, but he and I have been intensely working on drafting the questions and finding the right measure of the questions, not to kill them at the very first moment and they will just give up asking for support. But that would be really, really great. I really appreciate you sharing all the information.
Yeah, we can certainly look at sharing those, Goga. And I think the key thing is getting the relevant information. So what we discover is we use what we call branching within the forms. I'm not sure if you've got to that level yet, but if something's not applicable dependent on an answer, then skip past it. We don't want the academic to have to tick NA for 10 different fields. We just go to the point of relevance as we build the form. So I think that's the key thing for me, the sort of intelligence built around the branching within the forms as well as the questions itself. So what do we need? And we're also, what I would say is we're developing a form similar to this for the actual request for contracts as well. So that's possibly even more complicated to do with the various branching. So what type of agreement is it? And then the information we need is dramatically different for every type of contract we get. So we're currently working through and actually mapping it all out initially and then just building it, into those sections that people need to complete.
But the main goal for us was to avoid back and forth via email. So it was about making sure we had as much information as we could at the start to try and avoid the whole 25 emails going back and forwards, asking them what they actually wanted, telling them the guidance, etc., etc. So it was about minimizing that back and forth at an early stage so that we could do a costing pretty quickly for people.
Yeah, that really looks and sounds brilliant. The costing is always done by the when requested in a detail, it's always done by our financial unit. I can see that your workload, like Enterprise Office, has both sides covered, financing and development of the bid and so on. And so it's the entire pool of activities. Here, the International Relations and Project Office exclusively work on bid development support, but not on financing and costings, which with two people really makes our life easier. Which actually brings me to say that I don't have any actual insight into the background online system that the financing unit has, which might be something close to what we've just seen, which is great, but I will probably never use it in this context. Yeah, but it's great to see that.
We do frequently have conversations in the UK, so each institution has a different approach to the various financial parts. So some organizations have the bid development as one separate thing, the setting up the budget as another separate thing, what we call pre-award, and then the post-award, the management of the project, as something separate still. At Loughborough, I think historically there's been a separation, and then it was all brought together. So it's one of those things where a lot of universities in the UK change things, try to do things better. whether the system we've got at the moment is the perfect one, I guess we'll review in time.
Yeah, well, I guess it's really hard to get to the level of perfection that is absolute, but I would say everything is work in progress. Thank you, Adam. This was really brilliant. Thank you so much. Are there any questions, comments, ideas? Okay. If
Thank
not,
you.
yeah, well, maybe questions will pop up on the go, so we're all here. Thanks, Adam. And if actually we are all ready, we can go for the pre-recorded session from, as I said, Sam McGinty, who is head of legal services. Legal services are indispensable part of the whole process, and we would love to have them in our team. So I guess we're all eager to hear what Sam has to say. And thank you for arranging this, really. Thank you. I'll mute myself and leave.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Perfect. So me and Adam have just swapped computers over, so just bear with us a minute. Right, let me share my screen. Hold on one moment. There we go. You've always got too many things open when you try and share these things, I think. Right. Can you see this, everyone? Okay, great. Hopefully you'll be able to hear it.
Hello there. Sorry I can't be speaking to you live today. Colleagues have asked me to prepare a short talk to you on contracts, policies and governance and how we do things at Loughborough University. My name is Sam McGinty. I'm a qualified solicitor or lawyer and the head of the university's in-house legal services team. As a team, legal services focus on contracts and agreements which support a range of university activities, but our biggest client is the university's Research and Enterprise Office. We also employ a property lawyer, as the university has a large campus in the East Midlands and a campus in London. We don't do all the legal work for the university, so we help manage the firm of external panel of external law firms as well, and they pick up work such as employment law and student matters. So I've been asked to talk to you about policies for contracts. So why is it important to have a policy for a contract? Simply put, consistency. Consistency makes it more efficient for the staff handling contracts. It provides assurance to senior management that things are being done the right way, and it makes it easier for partners who work with us as they know what to expect. We can ensure that everyone involved in discussions with external organisations, from business development managers to research associates and everybody in between, including finance staff and contract managers, are all giving the same message if we're all working to the same policy. This can make negotiations much less painful and it can make the university seem much more professional. At Loughborough, before we had a policy, there was no one set of terms and conditions that colleagues used for any particular engagement. There was no standard position in those negotiations and there was no consistency. This meant that different terms and conditions were being agreed, sometimes with the same party, and external organisations and academics often got a different answer depending on who they spoke to in the relevant teams. For everybody involved, this was frustrating, inefficient, and could ultimately damage valuable internal and external relationships. But then things got better. In 2016, the university adopted something called the Contracts Approval Policy. This was part of our financial regulations and part of the university's constitution. This was a statement of the university's standard position in negotiations, included a route for escalation within the university if there was an issue which couldn't be resolved. And the position in the policy was drawn from legal requirements, regulatory rules, sector good practice, and a reflection of the commercial reality in those negotiations. This was quite a novel approach, and I'd worked in-house in different organisations before I came to Loughborough, and I'd never seen it done before, but it works. Naturally, the content has to be kept confidential, otherwise it will give our negotiation position away, and that's why I'm not going to be able to give you too much detail about what the policy says. So the policy does cover the whole range of issues we encounter in typical contracts: IP ownership, limits of liability, confidentiality, and other issues. Where something is escalated for approval, it stays within the professional services staff, and the academic on the project has the opportunity to explain the strategic importance of the project or relationship, so the decision makers can understand the significance of what they're being asked to look at in the fullest context. Between 2017 and 18, we turned the policy into a handbook, and that handbook or playbook supports colleagues in applying the policy on a case-by-case basis. Legal Services drafts and manages the handbook. We also provide training and a suite of precedent agreements. We represent the location where complex matters can be escalated to, and those precedent agreements are all drafted in line with the university's policy, so we're all starting from the right place. This makes it much easier for colleagues in research and enterprise teams to crank through the contracts, but working within a framework which provides assurance to senior management that what's being agreed is in line with their expectations and our legal and regulatory requirements. Those staff who are dealing with contracts also have the help and support of a team of qualified lawyers when they encounter something that's difficult. Now, good policies should have flexibility in them, and they shouldn't be too rigid. If we all negotiated on the basis that it was our way or the highway, we would never get anything done. So where we have a strong business case to agree to something out of the ordinary, we can do within the policy, and that just requires that senior management approval that I mentioned earlier. So, with a strong policy, a robust set of precedents which cover the most common scenarios and have been drafted in accordance with the policy, with training and resources to support colleagues in drafting and negotiating contracts, I believe Loughborough is in a much stronger position than it was previously to make a success of contracting large volumes of research and enterprise agreements, contributing to building quality partnerships with industry and other higher education institutions, and helping to build constructive working relationships with our academic colleagues. I really hope you found that interesting and useful. Thank you very much for listening, and I really do hope you enjoy the rest of your workshop. Thank you.
Okay, so I hope that was a little bit interesting for you. That's we've had a bit of a journey with respect to our kind of legal services over the last few years, so it's changed quite a lot, as you can see.
That was kind of cool. It was more lively than I've expected it to be. So say hi to Sam, and please thank him in our name. This was nice.
He would have been happy to do it live, but he's on paternity leave at the moment because they had a baby a few weeks ago, so
Great.
he recorded it for us before he went away. So
great, yeah. So he was actually talking about the handbook that Adam mentioned, like contracts handbook. Yeah, it's nice to have these things in one place. Yeah, we have the handbooks and the book of regulations on the website in separate sections called documents, but it would be nice to have them nicely streamlined in a single reference document. Yeah. Great. Thank you. This was neat. Yeah. So Claire, if you're ready, we can move on to your session. It's actually a critical question: when higher level approvals are needed or necessary or a must. Thank you. The floor is yours.
no problem. Let me find it. Here we go. Okay, can you see my presentation okay? Awesome. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about when we need higher level approvals, what for, and how we go about getting them at Loughborough. So sometimes we have to get approval from the university around certain activities or submitting certain research grants, and these are some examples of where we would need to get that in place. Adam talked a little bit about the contracts approvals, which obviously sometimes gets escalated as well, but I'll talk more about it from a proposal perspective. So where we have a particularly large proposal, so anything over £1 million is what we consider large. So most European proposals would fall into this category. We have to get approvals from our Pro-Vice Chancellor for research. So before the proposal is submitted, we have to send him an email explaining what the proposal is, who's applying for it, how much it's worth to the university and how much it's worth overall. And he has to give the go-ahead before we're allowed to submit that proposal. There's also a requirement where an institutional commitment's needed. So for some projects, I can't remember who spoke, when Steve Rothberg spoke about it on the first day, he talked about how we often put PhD students as a commitment against certain projects. So if an academic is going to bring in a certain amount of money, the university might match that with a PhD student, and sometimes that might need to go and get higher level approval. Sometimes that's from the dean within the school, or sometimes it's from our operations committee. Some schemes require a lot of support from the university. So a really good example of that is at the moment we've got this scheme, a fellowship scheme for academics, which is called Lever Hume, and the funding doesn't even cover the person's full salary. So the university has to make a contribution to that, and they have to make a strategic decision as to whether they want to support that fellowship application, because it will cost them money, but it's a very prestigious award for the university to have and for that individual. So it just needs that approval at that higher level. And the final one is for any really prestigious applications that the senior university management should be aware of. So another really good example of that is we got through to a scheme that was funding what they described as pockets of excellence, and they're really prestigious schemes that they only funded 13 of these areas, and we got one of them in our maths education centre. And it was really important that the senior management of the university were aware of the proposal, were aware that it was going in, so that they were able to talk about it well when it was awarded. So those are the types of things where we have to get higher level approvals when we're writing funding applications. So a lot of this gets approved by our operations committee. I don't know if you guys have something like an operations committee, but that's what we have. They have a number of key roles, but I just picked out the ones that were maybe more relevant for today. So they advise Senate, the University Senate, on future academic developments. They have a lot to do with things like student fees and PhD programs and all that kind of thing as well. They approve the relevant stages of major projects. Now, those can be research projects, or they can be things like building projects on the university campus. So, for example, we've recently built we're in the process of building a new tennis centre, and there would have had to have been a business case for that would have gone to our operations committee that they would have had to approve in order for that to happen. And they also they consider and approve any projects which have resource implications, whether that's financial or staff. So they make sure they make that decision. So there's two parts to operations committee. The first one is they have a briefing committee, and these meet every Monday. And they're made up by the provost, the chief operating officer of the university, and the director of finance. And they make the higher level decisions. So if you want approval to recruit a new position to your team or something minor, they're kind of ops briefings. So they tend to be the smaller things or the things that need a really quick approval. And then we have the operations the main operations committee. Sorry, I've typed that wrong on my slide. And they meet every month. And that's made up of the provost, the chief operating officer, the director of finance, the pro-vice chancellors. So we currently have 2, but we did have 3. So they attend, and the director of HR. The reason the director of HR is there because often recruitment or new roles are discussed. So that's why that person's there. And the pro-vice chancellors are there because it's usually something will fall under one of their areas, either enterprise research or teaching. So they're often there to give more context behind the request that's been put in to the ops committee. So the process that happens is you write a paper to ops committee, which I've done a few times and found quite intimidating, if I'm really honest, because I've only done it a few times. And then the ops committee secretariat's informed and provided with a briefing paper. And we have a deadline of close of play on a Thursday, so she has to have it by then in order to be able to put it to the ops committee on the following Monday. And then they're usually pretty quick actually at letting us know within a few days as to what the decision's been made or if there's a recommendation. So it's pretty helpful. So just some key points. If you do have to write any kind of papers to get approvals or to request some extra resources for something that you want to do research-wise or proposal-wise, keep it really, really short and to the point. So we're usually given a maximum of 2 sides. Try and keep it less than that if you can. So just include the absolutely necessary information. But you do need to provide some background context behind what you're asking, because the people in that meeting might not have a good understanding of what it is you're requesting. Make it very, very clear what you're asking for a decision on. So you can have it in bold at the end. I am asking for a decision on approval of blah, 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 blah. And that's the way to kind of make it very, very clear what you're asking for. Offer to provide further information if it's needed. So if you feel like you were unable to put everything into the paper, offer to have a discussion afterwards. Consider who the best person to submit the paper is. So I've often written these papers, but then somebody else has submitted it. For example, the dean of a school or the academic that is running the project. So it's not, I might write them, but it might not be me that submits the paper to ops because I'm maybe not the best person to do so. Ask for an example. So if you've never seen one before, have a chat with your senior management and find out if they've got an example you could have a look at, so you can see all the types of things that are included. Because if you've never written something like that before, it can be really intimidating, I think. And finally, if it's a particularly complex case or something very specific you're asking for, have a think who on the committee might be a good person to represent your case and talk to them first, so that in the meeting they're able to say, ah, yes, I know all about this because I've talked to this person about it, and I think it's really important because of la 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 la. So those are the types of things that I think are really important when getting these higher level approvals for things. So that's that. Sorry, that was really speedy, but hopefully that's a little bit useful and give you some ideas if you do have to get those higher level approvals or where those might be required. But that's how we do things at Loughborough. Yeah, hopefully that's useful for you. And any questions really, or any comments?
Thank you, Claire. Thank you so much. Any questions? I don't think, actually, I've been at the faculty for 15 years now, more than 14 years now. I've never seen such a huge grant. I think that EXtremeClimTwin is the largest grant at the faculty since I've been here in a coordinating role. I mean, almost €1 million is really the greatest so far. So, Jenna, am I close to right? If we exclude the EPA higher education infrastructural project, which is more than $1 million, but just for research.
Yes, I think that Horizon project has the biggest project, and this is the first one where we are coordinator. Yes, I think.
Yeah.
I think that you're right.
Yeah, Biljana, would you please be kind to explain the process? How how was your approval process actually going on? Now that you can share with some colleagues outside the UNSPMF. Thank you.
Yes, I can say how we actually did it. First, we have a chair of physical geography, which I belong to. So when I had an idea to apply for this project, and before even I asked our partners to become our partners, I consulted our chief of the chair of physical geography. I told him that we are planning to do something like that, and wrote some kind of a note that we will do it, and that it should be discussed on a board of geography department. And afterwards, it was discussed on a board for the whole faculty, and it was approved. When we actually prepared the documentation, Goga actually helped me a lot. We identified the poll, we identified the partners, we identified the budget approximately. for the whole consortium, and approximately the budget for our institution and other institutions. And I had to put down the names of the team members that will be involved in the EXtremeClimTwin project. So that's actually the way we did it. It is not really complicated. All we have to do is actually discuss the structure of the project and the idea. In the chair of physical geography, actually the chair which we belong to, and then it goes further up the level of the institution, and afterwards we get approved. Actually, we got the note that we can apply for these fundings. And as if I remember correctly, our institution has a rule that everyone have a chance to participate, especially in these horizon projects, and no one actually will be stopped if they want to participate and if they want to write a project. So the key is to first discuss the idea, the budget with your chair and the team members. And I did it with the chair of physical geography, but before that I talked to Goga and the International Relations Office, because I needed guidance. I didn't know everything on my own. So that's how we actually did it. So it's not a really complicated way, but it is efficient if you talk first with the International Relations Office and then with your colleagues presenting the idea, and each of them can contribute with what they think, or maybe somehow advise you which partners to contact. Or this is the way we actually operate at our Department of Geography. So I think it is a nice way to communicate and to get the approval. So before we went to the board of the Geography Department, we actually discussed everything with the chair and then with Goga, and we decided what to do.
Great. Thanks, Giga. Diana, will it be okay from my side to ask you what the internal process is at the Institute of Field and Vegetable Crops? It's also a public budget institution, just so that clear.
Yes, and then I will have one question for you, Goga, regarding IPA projects. Well, the only approval that we need to obtain before formally applying for the project is from a scientific board of the institute, and that's it. All others approvals are not at the moment required. And regarding that, we also have a problem, for example, with IPA projects, when you can apply only once as institution. So you can propose only one project as institution on this call, and then sometimes the scientific board has a really tough job to decide what proposal should be awarded or approved for further application and which one should be rejected. So I'm interested, how do you handle these really unpleasant issues?
Great, thank you for your question. I will definitely answer it. But before I do it and just pass the experience from our institution, I can ask the very same question to Adam and Claire. Has it ever happened in your working experience at Loughborough University that you had such a tough decision on your table to make and help, I don't know, associate deans to just cut at some point and say, you are going and the rest are staying for some other actions?
Yeah, so this happens a lot. We have a lot of schemes that are either need an institutional commitment, therefore we decide we can only put a small number of applications in, or we have some funders that say, as an institution, you can put one proposal in. So we try and be really fair. So what we do is we tend to have an internal process where we do what we call an internal expression of interest, and we ask people to write a mini proposal. So it will depend on the scheme, but it's usually between 2 and 4 pages explaining what it is they're going to do, why they're going to do it, sort of an overview of their project. Then what we do is we formulate a panel of senior academics. So it's usually chaired by by Steve Rothberg, our Pro-Vice Chancellor for Research, usually, depends on the scheme. And then it's made up of individuals who might have expertise in the topic or know about the funder or various things like that. So we might have a panel of maybe four senior academics, and they will review all the proposals, and then they will have a meeting where they will decide which one to support or which ones to put forward. So that's the case where we're only allowed to put in one or so. Where we can put in more, we often ask the schools to decide. So fellowships are a really good example where we don't want to put hundreds in, but we're maybe not quite so limited to one. So what we tend to do then is we ask the dean of the school to rank their applicants in order. They submit an expression of interest. The dean says which order their preference list is, and then we then have a panel, but that panel takes into account what the dean thinks. So there's different processes that we put in place for different types of management. Does that answer your question? Okay, good. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Claire. And
okay.
I can say that it's pretty much similar to what we have been doing here. Well, Tina, this is how we did it. We had a restriction for the last call. It's the second call with Hungary, Serbia-Hungary. And if just for the reference, the instrument for pre-accession is the abbreviation for Adam and Claire. It's the funding that we use with the cross-border programs. So Hungary, Montenegro, Bosnia, Bulgaria, Romania, and these kind of programs to help us get to the EU as quick as possible. We did it like this. There is an internal document which is called the project ID card, and I circulate it to the research community in the faculty and set the internal deadline. And this is kind of an expression of interest. The ID card is basic, but it's tailor-made to fit the EPA call for the occasion and to give the information on the priority in the call, the partnership, the budget in terms of co-financing, and if the department is willing to co-finance, because it's by default the departmental level that provides co-financing. Who would be the team members? Who is the team leader? Are we assuming the role of the coordinator or a co-applicant? And as you can imagine, all the relevant details covered by the call itself. And there's a section which is like for a free text. If there are some things to take care about, if there are some special requirements on behalf, if there's equipment to be procured, and other relevant things not specific for, not by default included in the call, we ask the colleagues to clearly announce those. So all the ID cards come to my computer, and this is how we get the first info who is interested. Of course, it always means that somebody will check in a week later, that somebody will check in 2 days before the deadline, but this is life. And we handle the things on the go as they come. And there's huge openness from all of us to accept every single proposal from the department. Now that I received the ID cards, this was the first level of the selection, let's say. We made so Vice Dean for Science, Surgeon, who is here, and myself, we invited the colleagues for a roundtable discussion to give them the chance to elaborate the proposals and ideas, and actually a fair chance to hear each other, because this is only democratic. And because if you're honest, you will see that some other proposal stands better chance than yours. And okay, then you will be more at ease with decision that you are not the one who is picked. So we had a meeting. This was a rough meeting. It wasn't really a pleasant atmosphere. It was too competitive, in my opinion, but we lived through it. And then what I did, I made, again, a second level of evaluation and judgment. and I judged each proposal with this elaborate information against the call criteria. And I just went point by point by points of the relevance, impacts, and all other details. And I also did a qualitative review, how much, how well it fits the topic and all other details. And I made a 15 pages report. And this report first went to a Vice Dean for Science and to the Dean. And then after their approval, I simply clicked send, and it went to all the members of that meeting and all the potential applicants. And that was it. We had no complaints. We made a fair choice, I guess. It was unbiased. That's why it was done by the head of international relations office and not the Vice Dean, because there were people from chemistry, and Vice Dean comes from the Department of Chemistry. And what happened in reality is that due to various other reasons, the very last ranked proposal went actually into competition and won the competition. So against all odds, but this is what actually happened in the end. But even from this perspective, I can say that I'm happy with how the process went in the end. So this may be one of the ways on how to go about these tricky and unpleasant situations. We never had a chance, on the other hand. This is something I was talking about yesterday in my presentation, but you can see it on YouTube as well, but we can always talk, Diana, of course. We never had a chance that both proposals or several proposals are actually positively evaluated and could get a grant, but the institutional decision is to single out only one. So we can have multiple submissions, but only one grant. So we've never had that, but I guess we would deal pretty much in the similar or same way. Yeah, thank you for your question. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thanks. If not, I'll move on to my presentation, which is just a bit more on the procedures in place and procedures not in place at the Faculty of Sciences. This always listening to colleagues from Loughborough and other colleagues, I've had a fair share of insight into the Penn State University when I was there. It's pretty much similar or same procedures because, yeah, we're dealing with the same thing. It's just a matter of creativity on behalf of the institution, how easy or how harder you would do things. Okay, I'll share my screen. Approval processes at the University of Novi Sad. Can you see my screen? Yes, okay. Let me just go to slideshow. And swap the screens. I'm sorry for taking your time with this, but yeah, are we good? Okay, perfect. So research approval processes at the faculty.
Oh, sorry. We see your presentation screen, not the PowerPoint presentation. Yes. We can see the screen and the next slide.
Okay.
Sorry.
Is this better now?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. So my screens go nuts, both of them. So yesterday I had it right, but today it's totally the other way around. But never mind. It's important that you see it well. Okay. Nope. Okay, here's the one. This is just a reminder because the Faculty of Sciences is no different than any other probably institution in Serbia or elsewhere, because it's pretty much the same level of communication and superiority and hierarchy actually among the constituents in the process. Starting from the International Relations Office, we are most likely to always run first to our Vice Dean for Science, International Cooperation and Development, but also to other Vice Deans and Head of Departments, depending on the level of approval or communication that is needed. Of course, from Vice Deans and Department Heads, we go to institutional leadership, which is Dean and the Vice Deans, of course. From there, we go to the national level, which are ministries, or international level, who set the terms for competitions and grants, which is, I don't know, Horizon Europe or some EPA, for example, programs. So it's the funding agencies. And of course, this cascading responsibility upwards also goes downwards from the national level and international level, through institutional leadership, through Vice Deans to the international office. And the University of Novi Sad is somewhere in between, because, as you know, we are not an integrated university. And there is some instance when university is necessary step in the process. And there are many of those where the institutions can bypass the university and do it directly with the ministry or the funding agencies other than the national level, and so on and so forth. But basically, the center and the periphery of the whole process are researchers, which may be included in the whole process, starting from the possibility to work at the international office, and of course, to be in the ministry or to be in any of the structures of the European Union, Commission, whatever. So it's the constant flow among constituents, is the constant exchange of information, but not forget that the researchers and research community and us common people as beneficiaries are on the receiving and giving end as well. A question for my colleagues from the Faculty of Sciences is, do you know about the regulations of internal procedures for application and implementation of international projects at UNSPMF? And if you do, are you aware of Article 4? That's the question for Vidana, Miroslav, Georgie, Ivana Pejovic, and so on and so forth. Now you're reading the article.
No, I'm not reading the article. I remember the ID form. For some projects, we submitted them. For others, we didn't. When we submitted them, it was in most cases mandatory. For example, when we had that limitation to number of applications for the lead beneficiary in the EPA project or something. So this was a mandatory, then we needed to submit the ID, but in most cases, I will be honest, we don't submit it.
Well, thank you for your honesty. I'm pretty sure that 98% of the people, except those two who took part in writing the book of the regulations, myself included, are not aware of this kind of hard deadline, which is, if you intend, if you plan, you have 10 days before.
10 days, I love that. Not later.
Exactly. 10 working days, which in practice means 2 weeks. So we're being flexible. This never happened as long as I have been here, which is hard in a way, but also proves the huge level of openness on behalf of everybody to just support and get the people motivated and incentivized to apply. So when yesterday, actually, or it was, I can't remember which Steve it was now. I think it was yesterday, or Steve Rothberg. There's this little moment of Associate Dean showing and reminding colleagues of the fact sheets. This is how we do things, because this is something good to have some procedures in place. So it's not a bad idea that not only for the new staff, but for everybody institution, there's a frequent reminder, hey guys, we have this book of regulations, which makes our lives easier. So let's just simply use it. But okay, let's
add something. Sorry for interrupting, but
yeah.
We are drafting our book of regulations for international projects, and I actually stole this article from you. And now I'm not happy for hearing that nobody cares about this.
No, we deeply care. We deeply care.
Deeply care. Okay, I hope that my colleagues will deeply care also.
Well, thank you, Fiona, thank you for your honesty, and yeah, I guess we should push things more with the research community.
Sorry, Goga, can I just add? We also have the 10-day window.
Okay.
And people do it now. And do you know why people do it?
Why?
We told them no. If they were later than 10 days, we told, or shorter than 10 days, we started saying no to people, like, so they weren't allowed to submit their proposals. And now they're really good.
Claire, don't give her ideas, please.
Claire, I think that one simple no being said from the dean or the approver of any level would resolve many ongoing issues.
Yeah, it's really worked. I mean, we still do the odd one that we sneak in because we try and help, but we said no a few times and now everyone's really good and they do it in 10 days every time.
That is so nice that you shared. Thank you so much. I would be
It
really
took a while. It took a while, but we got there eventually.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool to have that kind of authority to say no and feel good about it because you did the right thing. And once it applies to somebody, it will apply to everybody later on. So I strongly encourage the vice dean. Surgeon, I cannot see your face. No, Surgeon, did he leave? He left. Surgeon left, but I just wanted to point to him and say no sometimes. It's going to be good for everybody in the long run. But yeah, so there is this lovely article in the regulations which would make our life easier for future. The work in progress is that we're actually doing and switching things to online internal approval form, and this is why I was so interested in your online questionnaire for researchers. At this very stage, it's a very basic one. It has up to 10 questions, not to take too much time, but now seeing your level of details at Loughborough, we will probably extend it to a bit more questions to get more relevant and correct information. So in the next slide, I just present a screenshots of the working version of this questionnaire, and it's I just went to the section where there's a interactive form for putting in the basic data about the project. So it's the name, the acronym, abstract in English and in Serbian, financial data, equipment data if the items of equipment are needed, partnership, leading role or co-applicant role, and I just entered so that you can see some details about the EXtremeClimTwin project. This is important for the project for asking for approval, but if you see here at the circle, the word which is izveštaj in Serbian, it's report. After drafting and extracting the data, we can actually have an eye on ongoing, implemented and archived projects. So I think that this base, which is now only in the testing phase, has a lot of potential, but it will always be a work in progress, at least in the very beginning of the process. We are trying to finish it now and make it live among the research community and avoid the tons of papers and communication between department and dean's office and the entire structure which lies behind. So what is actually approved when we talk about approval processes at the Faculty of Sciences? It's the proposal. It's only the intention, the initiative to participate, the future commitment and participation on behalf of the research community. It is not the quality in terms of relevance, in terms of proposed research, budget, excellence, impact, and so on and so forth. Basically, everybody gets the approval to participate without getting much into details. And this again brings me back to yesterday's topic, which is peer-reviewed process and this interdependence between the two. So internal approval is closely connected to peer review, internal peer review processes. So all researchers by default get support to apply for research funding, fellowships, academic mobility, entering agreements, networking, training, whatever and whenever. We even have in our system the fact that this item of international projects and participations is always open. So we do not need to wait for another meeting of the faculty, scientific and educational board. This is an always open point, and everybody will immediately get the approval and the written decision that they can go ahead with the activity. So it's absolute academic freedom to choose research topics when it comes to Faculty of Sciences. Pros and cons are obvious, we can discuss it together, but this is how it is at the very moment. So in reality, we definitely have the formal procedures, which are okay, but not respected, even though clearly articulated. There is a lack of commitment and consistency on behalf of the management of the faculty, whom I see as the ones taking the process over and having their say, and saying that no, sometimes. Unfortunately, there is a lack of people to take additional workload. There's a lack of proposal processing channels as well as proposal development process. There's a lack of legal support in contract approval processes. I was really, I felt like really under a lot of pressure when I was negotiating this grant agreement, both with Commission, but both consortium agreement is a very simple document with the partners from the EXtremeClimTwin. It was huge responsibility on my back, and there was little chance to consult the legal office around that. So we need that structure in place and fully operational to understand the EU contract, not only contracts on the level of national legislation, but we need people competent in understanding contracts other than the national. So everybody has the freedom of choice, and everybody gets broad support to go for research directions. So I really love the way that Calibre moved things in Loughborough, and I will advocate this always. So let's move from more and more to good to great. This should be a maxim for us in the future, and I know that this project and Biden as coordinators support this very much, and this is something that's going to be articulated in our strategy of internal development, institutional one, as much as the group for hydroclimate extremes. And there's always a choice, whether we stay here and continue, or we really move on and change things, because at some point there will be a critical point when this change is really necessary and induced. I mean, we'll feel the pressure that we need to change things, and I think that this project is changing things quite much. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm open for questions, of course, and I know that Claire and Adam will also gladly take any questions or comments that you have. Thank you very much. Any comments, ideas?
Well, I can just say, even if we don't respect too much internal procedures sometimes, but I can say that Gordana helps a lot with the quality of the applications, and she takes on the well, say constant additional workload, and her door is always open. What we need at the faculty level is, I was discussing that with Goga, also to, let's say, somehow recognize the workload of the professors, for example, at the faculty, who will serve as certain reviewers. With us, we don't have it now. And I think this is something I asked Steve, how do you motivate professors to take that additional workload? So this is something we need to work on in the future, to develop the procedures for recognition of that additional workload. And well, I don't know. So this is something we need to think about, and definitely it will improve the quality of the submitted applications. And I know the difference when Goga looked at the application and when she didn't. So this is something we need definitely to work on if we want to be better in the future.
Thank you very much for your comment. There's this unbelievably restrictive rule from the government that we cannot employ people. There's a certain number already preset by systematization of the institution. So it's for the Faculty of Sciences is 615 people. There's no way we can go above that limit. So we can sit and cry for more people every day, but it's not going to happen. So the system sets that the International Relations Office for the Faculty of Sciences can take 2 people, and that's it. The only escape is that we use, I don't know, utilize the overheads from some projects and engage a contract manager or whoever we need in the process. But this is not popular. I believe, I know for us definitely, but I don't know for other institutions. But it's one thing to get the workload redistributed among people, because there's too much pressure on only 1 or 2 people. Yeah. Any other comments?
If I may, yes, I think that the key here is actually the communication between people, departments, is different units, and